All right, let's go ahead and get started. It's 10 o'clock. Helping me run the show is actually Cameron. If you have any questions as we go through this, go ahead and just put them in chat, or you can actually unmute and ask them. I'll try to address it as I go as well. So as long as we don't get too carried away on these. When I was asked to do this presentation, which we try to do periodically, get to thinking about some of the conversations that have been asked of the support team and of me over actually the past 3 or 4 months. It seemed to make some sense to go through what I'll loosely call order management. I think there's a question on this already, but today is mostly on commission reconciliation. So basically, I'm finding some of our customers out there will put the order in Oasis, and then sometimes there's the processes after the order is sent to the factory, and sometimes there isn't. And I'm a firm believer that there's a lot of missed opportunity there. Actually, there's a great way of not getting paid for your work. I'll leave it at that, among other things. So shipping and details of that. So what we're going to do is break this up into 4 different webinars, if you will. Today is the reconciling commissioned orders, okay? And then in May, I'll do another one where it's resale order accounting. So those of you that do resale and distributors, show you basically how to do the accounting side of it. So it assumes that the order's in there and you're just trying to process invoices in various ways. And then in June, we're going to do shipping. That's the other processes after the fact that you can use to make sure that the factory has the order and deal with the shipping issues there. And then paying salespeople, some reporting, and some other advanced order management items. But today, the focus is getting money from the factories, money you've already earned. And it really is based upon what I was alluding to earlier. As I sat down and I was thinking about what everyone was having questions on, or I wouldn't say problems with, but just trying to understand business and process and everything like that. Really, there's these 3. So it's commissioned orders, there's basic order process, which we'll talk about today, specification orders, EDI orders. I'll do one of those real quick. Actually, I won't do one of those because I forgot to set up an example, but resale orders and shipping. So we'll go through those in 3 different months, with today being the commissioned orders. Okay. And then we'll wrap up in July, I think it was. Sorry. Yeah, in July, we'll do basically some advanced stuff that we've been working on, and show you some really cool stuff that we have out there that kind of helps a lot of this process get a little bit easier for you. Okay. So for today, this is kind of the agenda. We're going to apply some invoices to orders. We're going to adjust some, and basically we'll get into this as we go forward on each one of these. Okay. So let's begin with applying invoices to orders in Oasis. So let me begin by moving this out of the way. And as most of you have, you probably received something like this from the factory. And this would probably, question? I think we just got someone joined. But you probably receive a commission or a spreadsheet or something from the factory. I see this coming in from various folks, and it's all over the place. Y'all are the gurus on the various scenarios out there, but this is probably a good one. In other words, it's not the best, but it is here. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just apply this invoice. So it's to an order that's already in the system, and I'll show you how I create invoices. You can, if you need to, go to orders and look up this order. So this is what I consider necessary in some cases, because if you send the order to the factory and they hand key in that PO number, it could be, it may not be exactly correct. So they may transpose some digits or whatever, but this one should be correct. So 2023 04 B. Okay. And sure enough, here's my order. And you could, I see a lot of folks do this, they'll go find the order and they'll have a file new invoice like. That's slowing you down. And I'll do it this time just because I wanted to show folks this way. Applying invoice to an order. It's pretty easy. You just find the order, you say new invoice like. By the way, I apologize. I'm on a Mac today. Windows looks a little bit different. So depending upon which platform you're on, this may look a little different, but it's pretty much the same menus and kind of the same spots here. Right? So I'll do my new invoice like, okay. And it's an invoice that looks good. And what I typically do is I'll go ahead and just put in, or I like to get everything on one screen myself, or 2 screens that are close together. So I have the spreadsheet or the email or the PDF or whatever it is from the factory, and it just allows me to apply everything in, or apply the data here. Matter of fact, I'll even cheat. I'll do the good old copy paste trick here. Okay. Now, invoice date, I forgot to put that on my example over here, but I'll just leave it for today for right now. Now, a couple of things to note here. First thing is, this is for a $2,000 PO. That looks good there. And by the way, I did see a number of our users out there that really like this tool, invoice all, or the F7 key. I do too. I like it because this gives me the capability of actually going through and just applying everything on that invoice real quick, just to see if it matches. And sure enough, we have a PO. The order is $2,000. The invoice amount, $2,000. Looks like we have, an issue here. So we have, let's take a look here. Looks like we have overage of 200. We get 90% of that. We have a couple of those. Okay. What happened here, what I want to hint at is the commission rate's wrong. Okay, so when we put the order in the system, and you're going to crash into this as applying invoices into OASIS, where basically the commission rate that that's on the order won't match the commission rate you're getting paid on. It should be 5%. And I set this up as a trick because a lot of I run into this a lot with folks. And the question is, which is correct? Okay, now you're going to know the scenarios, or you'll have access to the people that put in the order. My first instinct would be to go ask them. It's like, well, why is this 10%? It's like, no, it should have been 5 or whatever. Or did the factory mess up? So we're trying to find out, should we go argue with the factory on that 10% versus 5% commission rate? For today, I'm going to say we were wrong. In other words, it should be recorded in OASIS as 5%. On that note, you want to correct the order in OASIS before you move forward. Or just leave it as is. I'll show you how to do this real quick. But regardless, the order has to be corrected. So the as is, I'll show you here in a second. But the main thing is I'm going to apply this invoice. So it's 2,000, 2,000, and I don't have to change anything yet. So I'll just save and close this. I guess I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to go back into that order real fast. And I'm going to change that 10% to 5%. So the way you do that, and again, a lot of the folks that are doing accounting don't necessarily manage the orders, but you have to know a little bit about how to change the transaction inside of OASIS. So in this case, the order. And what I'll do is I'll just do a change order. So it's this little yellow button here, or you can go into action, make changes, same thing, but it unlocks the order so you can make those changes. And the reason why we do that with OASIS is we want to document every change to that order and why. For that, what I'll do is I'll change this to 5% there, and then sure enough, my earnings went down now, so it's 270. Matter of fact, that matches my sheet that I got from the factory, or my spreadsheet. Now, the last thing that I see a lot of folks do that I like the most is they'll go into either external notes or internal notes. You kind of make a policy at the company on which one you prefer the most, but make a note in here. It says what happened. It's like, let me see, changed. Okay, just make a note in there to say what happened. And if there's a more to the conversation, or whatever, just put that in there just so you have that documented change in the system. Okay. Done there. Now, last thing you have to do in OASIS when you're making a change, you have to print it. Okay. And that's just what we came up with to say, hey, we need to send this over to the factory. So when you do a print, it's going to want to send this to somebody, but there's a trick that we made, especially for the accounting folks a long time ago. And what you can do is where it says sending order, I don't want to send it to anybody. I want to actually just do this as an internal change. Okay. Hit okay. And at this point, everything's documented. As a matter of fact, if you go in the attachments, it shows I did an internal change when I sent it to, because it's just faking all this data here. But normally this would say sales order, or there may be some data files that we send over to the factory if we have integration with the factory you're working with here, whatever. But you'll see another internal change line in there that just documents what happened, and that helps the next person come along. Okay, that's the reason why we made those changes there. Questions there? All right, so now we have the order. And by the way, we know the invoice is in there as well. So what I did is I applied the invoice, I detected the issue, I decided to go ahead and save the invoice. because invoices really are focused on the value of the sale side, okay? And then it calculates commission and overage based upon which line's being invoiced back on the way it's recorded in the order. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go forward, okay? The main thing is, if on this order right here, I can see the original line of the order, I can see the invoice line, and shipping. I actually just allowed it to create a shipping line there. Normally, you just either don't let the system do that or put in real data, but that's a conversation we'll have in 2 months, okay? All right, so we have a correct order now with the correct commission rate on it. We have the invoice in it. Might as well just do a commission check as well, because that's all we had on this one spreadsheet, which is the one check that we got from the factory. So I have the check number, and the amount they paid. It's just the one. I'll go into payments. Okay, so I went from invoices, or actually orders is where I started on that one. I'm going to go to payments and do a file new commission check. Okay, and I'm using trolls. Sorry, using generic names here today. And my check number, I always like having a check number, a reference, or the month. So you can put in 2023-04-04, or you can put in the actual check number. So I'm saying that that's the check number or the EBT number, however you want to place that in. The check amount was $270. And don't forget to get the date received. This will be, again, what we talked about in July as far as paying people. And this is the date or the effective date for the money that came in. So if you're paying or at least incentivizing based on reports ran each month, then this should be the effective date you want to essentially pay the money you receive out to the sales force. So I'm going to leave that for today, assuming this will run as a a report to pay the salespeople for April. Okay. Now I need to add the invoices in. Now you can use some tricks to actually pull all the open invoices in. That's actually one of the tools up here and show all the unpaid invoices, which is kind of nice. Me personally, when I'm working on this, I just like to live up here in this top couple of boxes right here. And the reason for it is it brings the invoice in and then tells me if I have any issues. So there shouldn't be any on this one, but let's see what happens. So my invoice number is 875726562. Found it. And all I was doing is reading that, by the way. Now, the amount that I received is $270. And again, I like to actually key that in. So 270. And we don't do anything immediately. This is just kind of a process that we figured out a long time ago. But if I hit the enter key or the space bar at this point, it actually applies that $270 to that line. And there are a lot of other tricks that I can go through, but I'll stop right at the moment. Okay, yeah, on those. Main thing that I'm looking for when I'm looking at the screen is now my difference right here that I forgot to call attention to earlier, but it went to 0. So it started out as 270, but basically when we took the check amount less the total commission that we've applied from all the invoices, it went to 0. So we've balanced it out. Okay. The next step I'll do, and again today, what I'm trying to do is focus on getting money from the factory so we can keep the agency open and we can pay our sales force. I'm looking for specific things on the screen. One of them I'm looking for is this little close invoice. What'll happen is it's going to check this box here if the amount that we received from the factory for all the payments, not just this one, but for all the payments, is equal to or greater than the invoice commission that we expect. Okay, so this is what Oasis calculated from the invoice that was put in Oasis. That's that $270. Okay. By the way, you can double click on this and it'll open up that invoice and show you what's going on here. But this is also the estimated earnings. This is the same number here, estimated earnings on there. And again, the way it creates estimated earnings, as I was alluding to earlier, is it takes that line, adds up all the commission overage, and that's what you get right there. $270 in this case. All right, now I'm looking for a checkbox there that says it's going to close the invoice when I post this payment, but I also look for the closing of the order. Now, this is a two-step process for the order to close. First step is it has to invoice complete. So it was a $2,000 order with a $2,000 commission, or I'm sorry, $2,000 invoice. That's the first step in closing out that order. The second step is, did I receive all the money? Well, the system is expecting $270 on that order entirely. By the way, you can stay on this line, just highlight any part of this line like the cell right there, or that cell right there. You can do file, open order, just like we double clicked and opened the invoice. I'll click on open order and it'll show you that order. And sure enough, that's what it expects, $270. And because the order is where all the information really starts, it shows you the rest of the breakdown. So there's $90 in commission, $180 in overage, $270 total. And sure enough, that's what the system expects. That's what we received. It's going to close that order when I post this payment. Now, notice I closed out the order because I don't want to post it and then save over top of that flag changing, which happens occasionally. But I'm happy so far. By the way, if I did not get all the money, what I could do is dispute it. So if I clicked on that little dispute button here, that would actually flag that invoice for disputes. I don't have any good examples today on that, but it'll actually show you all the disputed invoices there. I'll take one out here real quick as an example, but there you go. At this point, we're good to post the payment. Our disputed invoices are our way of following up with the factories that we need to go ask for money. And later we can run a report for April if we want to use this as a way of paying our sales force. So let me go and post it. Post it, and we try to trick you here a little bit. So we're trying to make sure you're awake when you do this, and then say post. And at this point, it's when I do the save, it's going to roll through all the invoices and payments on, or I'm sorry, invoices and POs on here and close them out if they're all set up that way or properly. Save and close. We're done. We now have went through and posted our controls factory payment, which also included adding the invoices for it. Okay. Next one, let's go ahead and do the next set of orders here. And I have a couple of different scenarios I wanted to show today, just to get everybody understanding the some of the things that we see a lot of folks have to manage as they're working all the commission checks coming in from the factories. So this one is only 4 different invoices here, okay? And and again, it's kind of small. I've seen cases where there's thousands of invoices, but let's go through each one of these and kind of show how they'll go or how you'll do that. First thing is I would not go to the order section, look each one of these POs. It just happens to be one PO because that's all I had, put together for today's showing. But I always start in the invoice section when I'm applying multiple invoices for the same factory. And the reason for that is we've set the system up to be able to process a lot of invoices fairly quickly, although you have to hand key them in this scenario. Hopefully you can download them for factories, but that's another conversation. But if you go to invoices, you can go to File, New Invoice. So we're dealing with commissioned invoices today, not the resale variants. So we'll do a commissioned invoice. And the first thing you have to do is tell the system which factory you're working with, okay? So today I'm working with this little factory I set up called Represented Vendor. It's just a commissioned vendor I use in here for testing. And it wants to know what the PO number is. So the PO number is 2023-04-04. Now,
Mr. Bryant?
Yep, go ahead.
Before we get too far on this next set of examples, there was a quick question. With the previous, they were wondering if it was best practice to dispute any discrepancy with the vendors before making that change order.
Perfect. Yep. That's a beautiful conversation there. So to kind of recap that a little bit, the question, you have to come up with a little bit of a process at the agency to decide how you want to handle when the commission doesn't match the order. If you're new to the company, you might start asking that. Of course, usually you get kind of a funny look like, well, nobody else does that. But step one is to go find out about that particular order is what I would do. So if I knew it was a project order, I might ask either the quoter or the customer service person to find out what was going on that order. So in my example there, it was marked as a 10% line. And I only got 5% on there. So step one is detect that there's an issue. Step two, I probably would have went over to the customer service person and said, hey, does this make sense? Should that have been 5? And in that scenario is probably a case of, they said, yeah, we were wrong. We should be at 5%, not 10% on that for whatever reason. But you're going to run into scenarios where The factory is going to pay commission first and overage later. That's another scenario you'll bump into, and you just kind of have to learn those scenarios. That may not be one where you dispute. I would say no in most cases, but you have to know that you'll get the commission side and then you get the overage, which does make you think a little bit. But once you go through and ask the customer service person or the quoter, or you don't identify as one of the odd, unique scenarios where commission and overage is paid separately, or scenarios like that, then definitely dispute it. So at that point, ask the factory. And I have some of my contacts that I have out there that I talk to fairly frequently. To put it mildly, they have no problems asking the factory. It's like, if I'm in doubt, they ask is what it is. Ask the factory. It's like, hey, should we have gotten that 10% and make them provide it back? So, and again, you want to be a little bit respectful for that, but just make sure that it's going. So I hope I answered the question on there, but the key element on that is I would start inside the company, ask some questions. As you learn the different scenarios as far as commission overage, you're going to know pretty quick when to dispute and when not to. Okay. And hop back on there if I didn't answer the question to your satisfaction. You have another one, Cameron?
Yep. And then real quick, is there a scheduled or any of the webinars going to go into more detail on the process of disputing and follow-up?
I'll show you an example here in a second.
Sounds good.
Yep, I'll show one. It's not as clean as I'd hope because I didn't get as deep into it. But yeah, I'll do one right now because it makes sense for what we're doing. And we'll do it on this very next commission check too. Okay. All right. So any other questions?
That's it for now.
All right. So to kind of recap where we're at, I went to the invoices section. I did file new commissioned invoice. I keyed in RV, which is the code for my represented vendor. You need to use your factory codes. I put in the PO number and it found it. Okay. So create an invoice or credit. I'll just do invoices today. Credits really aren't that hard. They're kind of negative invoices. So that'd be a case where something was returned, among other scenarios you might crash into as well. So we'll just apply our regular invoice today. Okay. The invoice number, I'll hand key it, I guess, for today. 1227883. Okay. And again, I have some people that really like putting in the invoice date. It just changes a couple of reports, and it's arguably a little more information that we can use later, especially for some of the advanced stuff we'll talk about in a few months. Okay. But it's up to you on that one. Now, again, I'm kind of lazy. I'll be honest about that. So what I typically do is I get kind of in a routine. So I'll literally hit the F7 key, which again is that invoice all, and I take a look. It's like $9,766. Nope, it's 5,000. Darn. All right. So what did they ship on this thing? So if you're lucky enough to have a breakout of which fixture type shipped, things get pretty easy. But unfortunately, in this case, all we have are totals. What I'll do is I'll just start backing out some of these and wait until I get to 5,000. Oh, wait a minute, 5,496. Okay, so it matches. Okay, so if you don't have the actual bill of material that was invoiced, sometimes you can get lucky just by clicking this QI thing. So, okay, what is this? Quick invoice. And again, if you do not have that on your layout, go to File Preferences and add it. It's quick invoice. And all it does, it gives you the capability of toggling the count that's open. In other words, the total release less whatever has been invoiced already. Just so you can quickly toggle that in and find out if it matches what you have here. And again, I'm lazy. I want to go fast. And this gives me that capability just by identifying which items I think shipped. It does all the math. It says 5496, 5496. I'm there. Okay. Now I can also read over. Again, I want to verify, as we just talked through, 492.40. And again, all I'm doing is 492.40. This may be a little higher or lower based on the different data systems and how they do rounding. So you may see a few pennies here or there, generally speaking. What happened last time is I noticed it was way off by $90 is what it was. So I knew something was wrong. So this one looks good. We're to the penny all the way through. Okay. Now, Again, I'm a little bit lazy and I get in a little bit of a routine, but what I'll do is make sure everyone can see what I'm doing here. But I'll do the save and new. Again, that's one of those hot keys out there, F9 key. And I'll hit F7 and F9 a whole bunch, when I'm actually doing these. But right now I just click F7 or F9 on that to save it. So it wants to know, hey, would I like to change the order status to invoice? And some people say no to this. It's a longer conversation there. I generally just say, okay, I just don't worry about it. And again, your process is maybe a little bit different there. Okay, so now it's ready. It's ready for the next PO. It just so happens we have multiple shipments during the same month for the same PO. It happens, but you just keep adding them in. So 101-22827. Okay. Oh, no, sorry. 2020. I put the invoice number in, unfortunately. And by the way, you'll notice one thing about Oasis is it does try to figure things out for you. So if I don't key in the entire PO number, or if I leave the dashes out or spaces, it'll go and find it for me. It just brings up this little search screen here just to make sure, hey, is this the one you want? Because sometimes it may match multiples. Yeah, just double click on the one it is, invoice, and I'm ready to go. Okay. So in this one, something else shipped. Looks like we have $370. And I could open up another column here for an extended one, but I'm just going to pick on it today. All right. So what I did is I cheated again, and I just started using this QI quick invoice column out here. And I found that it looks like these last two items, looks like exit things or something like that, exit signs, I guess. And it looks like when I click the two of those, I happen to have $370, $18.15 commission. We got it. Okay. And again, I could do a file, save and new, or there's actually a button for it too if you like using buttons. Oh, forgot the invoice number. So my invoice number is 101-22827 and save and new. All right, last one. And I do crash into some other scenarios once in a while. And we'll just use this one real quick. It's an invoice. And my invoice number is 101-22830. Okay. Now, every once in a blue moon, and probably for a few of you every day, you'll have a scenario where it is not possible to figure out what it is they shipped because they're not doing split shipments, which we'll go into more in the shipping section. I wanted to do that after the fact because it makes more sense with that. But but every so often you'll end up with something that ships, but you really can't figure out what it is. And even if you have the bill of material, it doesn't make any sense. And what I hear happens is you'll end up with like a linear system or other type of products where they're just sending a common box of stuff, like cable or whatever it is, and they're going to bill for that cable. So if you end up with something like that where you really can't figure out what it is that shipped, you can still put it in the system and you can still make sure that you get paid for it. But you just can't, it changes things a little bit. And I wanted to bring that up as a scenario here, just so everyone kind of sees what's going on here and is comfortable with these realities you have to crash into. So in this case, I have something that's $100. There's clearly nothing in here that's even close to $100, even if I put it together. And my example here, just for grins, and hopefully I don't offend anybody on this one, but you end up with a scenario where you have a linear system here, and I'm just saying it's a box of cable or something like that. It happens to match this fixture type B here, but as an accounting person, I don't really know that. And you have to ask the question, does it make sense to really figure that out or not? And again, you'll have to answer that. And it gets even more complex if you have multiple multiple fixture types with linear systems on it, and they ship a common box of stuff. Okay. So what I do is there's this quick apply lot value, and I'll simply go in here and type in $100 and tab out of it. As soon as I do that, it simply adds a lot line down at the bottom. Okay. And again, if you resize this, one thing I do recommend is do file preferences and hit OK. It'll remember that width, so you're not having to resize it each time you're in there. But it does some calculations in the background, and each factory is going to be a little different on how they handle these scenarios. And in this one, what the system does is it took that $100 and is taking the average rate of earnings for that order. And again, you have to take the commission plus the overage, the total earnings, if you will, divide by the total price of the order. And that's what we call the rate of earnings. Okay. Multiply that by the $100. And what you end up with is $12.45 is what the system expects to get paid on. But because factories have their processes that they do internally, they may or may not pay commission and overage on these odd scenarios like this. So in my example here, I simply said they just took and paid commission on it. Sometimes they wouldn't pay commission on that either. But I said, okay, they're going to pay the commission. Now, what does that mean? Well, not too much. We still want to record it in Oasis as is. There's nothing you can do on the invoice, and we don't want to change the invoice and end up with weird conflicting scenarios. So I'm going to leave it as is and simply apply this invoice and deal with this scenario, this $5 or this discrepancy, if you will, later. And I'm going to go ahead and dispute it as well, just for grins more than anything else. Okay. All right. And then Cameron, if there's questions pop up, let me know on that one. Otherwise, I'm going to save and new, and we're going to come back to this $100 in this dispute scenario here. Okay. Okay, save and new. Last scenario here. I don't know why it's just popping in front there. PO number is out. Oops, sorry. R 2343 tab. Okay, so if you tab out and it doesn't find anything, then something's going on. You either have an EDI order or you have a spec order. In other words, it's out of territory spec. One example might be you're in a territory where the architect is at, and the building is here in Little Rock or something like that. At this point, you don't have the order in Oasis. And what I want to show you is how to apply the invoice and create an order at exactly the same time, saving you time, really, but still getting everything you need done or completed to make this go. We'll also have to deal with splits because you only get 50% of the value, the earnings on this order. You don't get the full amount. Okay. So you begin by just identifying the fact that this is an out of territory PO. Sometimes you can figure that out by who you're selling to. It'd be like CED of Little Rock or something like that. And you end up going, okay, we don't service Little Rock. What's going on here? Oh, it's a spec order. Okay. So what I'll do is go over here and I'll create, it's under tools. Create matching PO. So at this point, didn't find it in the system. So I'll create it by clicking on this or hit the F3 key. And normally I end up with an out of territory. I'm going to click on this, but I would recommend in these scenarios creating an out of territory customer. I forgot to do that in this test database here, but I'll just pick one for right now. So out of territory is what most people end up having. I'll go ahead and create an invoice as well. And now the invoice number is the invoice number. So 101-22890. Okay. And the PO amount, well, here I don't normally put this under the quick apply lot value. What I typically do is I'll fill it in down here. Whatever they tell me is what I have. So the price of the order is 10743. I messed that up. 743. $10,000 order. Okay. And our earnings should be
quick question.
Yep.
On that PO, is there a way to have the estimated earnings for this invoice rather than being a total amount be split into the commission and overage separately?
On the invoice? No, we don't do that here.
Okay. Is there any way to see those two totals?
No, you can do it at the line level by adding columns in.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. And what I don't have, because I messed up my example. I have a bad example there. Yeah, all right. So I really messed this one up. What did I do here?
Can't you just put it in the commission as a dollar amount and not a percentage?
Yes, you can, but I was trying something else.
Okay.
We're going to do it your way, though. So, that's what she just said. Whoever said that, thank you very much. That is a cheaty thing we did a long time ago, and it works very well because it does happen where you end up with some weird scenario here. That was not my intended example here, but it's okay. I'll roll with it. What I did is normally what you place in here is like a percentage, 10%. But if you go into the commission column, and you can do this on an order as well, you just start with a dollar sign, and it tells the system I'm not dealing with a commission percentage, I'm dealing with a commission dollar amount. Now it still will multiply out. So this is just quantity one material. And again, on a spec order, I didn't say this earlier, but we really don't care too much about the bill of material. You can put it in if you want, but I normally don't. But you say material, and at this point, I don't want to figure out what happened on that commission or overage or whatever it was. I just want to type it in because it doesn't mean a whole lot to me at this point. I'm going to get whatever the rep in territory put in the system. Okay.
25% should work.
Yeah. Okay.
Says Kim.
And I'm going to do an audible on my item here. I know what happened here now. Do that by two. Sorry. Sorry, I was trying to do my out of territory thing here. So basically, on what you'll see in a lot of cases for spec orders is you'll see the commission and overage or whatever the term is. So 25% is kind of neat on that one, but you only get half of that. All right. So what happened here on this, although I changed things, unfortunately, and it feels kind of odd doing that. I did show you this, but now I need to show the fact that we only get half the credit or credit for half this order because it's an out of territory. And the way you do that is you go to tools, and I'll do agency splits today. I'll allude to, but later I want you to take a look on your own how to add to a spec project, and I'll do some hand waving, which you can't see, unfortunately. But you can actually create projects in Oasis, and that allows you to see all the material you expect to go in that added territory job. And then as they come in, as the invoices come in, I can link them back to that job and see that, hey, I just got paid by one vendor, but another one didn't pay me for some reason. And then you start asking questions to make sure that you actually collect the spec orders. So I might do that as another longer conversation as one of these webinars later. But the main thing I want to show right now, most people just have a small volume of spec orders, and you have to be able to go and put in the order and the invoice together as we're doing now. Sometimes in this very scenario, we have to hand key in the commission rate. But the last step is this agency splits. And what I want you to do here is, because we have the architect, the specifier, we do not have the other agency. So that I'm just saying another agency. You can actually put in your friends out in the markets out there. So maybe this is the rep you normally work with across the state line or whatever, just for reporting purposes, you identify what goes to them versus someone else. Totally up to you. That's a configuration change. Call support if you want to do that. The main thing is you want to identify not local, which is us, if you will. You have to identify usually other agency. And what will happen when I hit OK is that split thing that was asked about earlier. So the key here is on a spec order, we want to record the full amount of the overage, or I'm sorry, the full amount of the invoice, the full amount of the earnings. That's for all the reps. And then you split it. You identify what your credits are. And the reason for that is that will actually help the reports that management runs. So you can say, okay, well, here's the volume that we're working with for a given factory, but here's the credit we have. Because again, the conversation between management and the manufacturer is probably going to be on only the credit that you get, not the full amount of the orders. So, and again, it varies. It allows you to report on both of those. All right. Any other questions for this, Cameron? Otherwise, this one's done.
No new questions at the moment.
Perfect. So sorry, my examples were perfect today. Makes me feel bad. All right. I'm going to save and close because that is my last invoice. Now it's time to apply this payment. So I'll go to payments, file new, commission check. All right. And it's my represented vendor here. Check number is EBT-93523. So something I made up. Good enough. So 1060278. All right. And I'll point it out this time. The difference is 1,600, basically whatever I key in here. And now I'm going to start counting down. All right. Again, this is for the April check that we're going to end up paying everybody on, or credit them one form or fashion. Now let's just start keying them in. And the thing here I like to do, again, I like going fast because I'm lazy. I'll focus on the amount, see the invoice number and the total paid. Okay. So 101,22783. Amount is 492.40. Okay, back to it, 101, 22827. And 1850. 12830. 5. And 101, 22890. And 134288. Now notice a couple of things here. I didn't focus on what was reconciling or anything like that. I'm just doing data entry. Okay. As a matter of fact, if you can get a spreadsheet from your factories that's pretty clean, it has a column with the invoice number and a column with the total paid. There's actually a tool in here where you can actually load an XLS or a CSV directly into Oasis. And all it does is take the invoice number, key it in here, take the amount paid, key it in here, and hit set. Well, it didn't quite do that, but that's effectively what it does. And it loads that data for you. It's even better if you can talk to them and then have us link to their data system, pull it down, using the download payment for factory, but that's a different conversation. Main thing is data entry is what I want to do first. I want to get this thing to reconcile. Okay. I'm still off by $256. Okay. What happened? Well, I got 18. Oh yeah. Bob didn't return the sample. Okay. So I'll let you figure out the process about, correcting Bob for not returning the sample. But the main thing is in Oasis, we can go to adjustments, go to description, and most people I know at least put it in. Whether or not you do the next step or not, it's another story. But sample 42352 just for documentation, and negative is withdrawal, long story. But anyway, minus if the factory kept or we lost the money, or positive, it's a credit back to us, which happens as well. 256 they kept for that sample. And you can actually identify who, the sales account you're going to ding against that. So basically, because I put my sales account on here, I'm going to get $256 taken away from me at the end of the month because I didn't return that sample. So more if you want to do that. All right. Main thing is I put in my sample. And again, you can resize these if you want. And then just have it remember that by showing the preferences. But my difference here is 0. That's what I was looking for. We have now balanced it out. We've completed what I consider step 1 of 3 steps. Okay. So step 1 is what we just did, data entry. Step 2 is we're wanting to reconcile or actually go through and find out if any of these are good or bad and dispute anything we want. The last step is to post it. Okay. So in here, again, if they're both checked, there's a pretty good chance you don't even have to worry about them. So if you have both these checked, you can actually ignore them. And one thing you can do is you can click on these columns to kind of have them sort. That's one way to do it. There's other columns you can show. And I've seen people show me tricks on this, and I'm not going to try being the guru on this. But just because you can sort these columns really helps you get things grouped together, so you can go through and say, okay, yeah, I need to think about these ones that the orders didn't close, and try to figure out what's going on there. So what I'm going to do on this one is a couple of things. One is looked like we got $5 paid on that. We had $12. Wow. What it is, we have a threshold in there. I put a threshold in as that, and I told the system, hey, if it's over $50, don't worry about it. So although we're $7.45 off, if anybody didn't pick up on that, that's what's happening here. I expected that one not to auto check the close invoice, but I forgot I have my threshold in there for $50. So because of this one, and because there was a request to show how to dispute stuff, I'm going to go ahead and dispute this one and say verify terms for payroll shipments. And this may be just a conversation with the factory, or maybe whoever's managing that relationship with the factory might know this, probably in the fine print and some T's and C's that they had someone sign. So anyway, the main thing you want to do here is go ahead and click the disputed button here. It's going to try calculating the amount that's disputed. Really, in my mind, it's really the system expected $12.45, and it we only paid $5 on this one. It's trying to do the entire order, but that's not going to be correct in this case. I'll do $7.45. here's what I want to do. This is my memory jog for later because I'll post this as a dispute, and it's up to me to go in later and verify or resolve these as I go forward. But the main thing is I hit OK. My note is back there. My dispute is back there. Okay. And at this point, we have a dispute going. So, okay. That's pretty much it. I'm going to leave everything else not identified as a dispute or anything. Do we have any questions, Cameron?
Yes. Would there be any reason why one would select that the invoice and order to close, but the vendor section of the order shows new or invoiced still in Oasis and on the reports? The customer will show closed though.
The customer will show closed?
Uh,
Oh, you must be talking about a resale. Okay. And in the case of a resale, there's two parts of the order. There's the commissioning side, and then there's the sell side. And you want to handle those independently because the customer is going to pay you for the customer side, and then the vendor, if you sold it with commission on it, should be paying you commission. And we want to track those independently. If that's the question, I'm not sure.
I have a question.
Okay, go for it.
Once you dispute that line item, how do you find it later on? Where does it show up, your dispute?
Hold that thought. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
That's where I'm headed. Beautiful. Thank you. I'll show you the screen. There's a specific spot for that. Okay. Last step. Any other questions, Cameron?
when you dispute an invoice recorded in a previous month and it is resolved in the following month, is that money resolved and reflected on the current commission report, or reports back to when it was originally disputed?
I'm going to say it reports in the month of the payment. Okay. Now I'm biting my tongue here a little bit because there's more to that conversation. So best way to explain this, when Oasis receives money, that's the month that we would actually pay it out. So if you end up with a scenario like this one where you dispute it and they pay you later, it's on that second commission check and the date of that commission check for when we pay it out on the reports. Okay. Now, I hope I answered their question because that's kind of a tricky one, but that's the correct answer for the commission side.
So that is when that dispute is resolved, when that last payment shows up, that's when.
Yeah.
Okay.
More on the disputes here on how to resolve them, because just because you got paid may not resolve it. Pretty rare, but more on that in a second too. Okay. Any other questions?
I believe that's all for now.
All right. Last thing, we're going to post it. Post. And yes, I want to post it, please. Save and close. All right. Now, the question was, where do we see our disputes? Okay. And we really have two major items. We're going to go over here in a second. One of them is I'm going to go back to invoices. I'm going to click on disputed. Hey, I have a bunch of disputed invoices in there from the past. My main one for today is the top one. And the disputes tab shows on the invoice. And then there's my notes that I put in there. There's the amount that I'm trying to figure out where it goes. Okay. Now, resolving it, a dispute in Oasis is really, I think, a two-step process. One is what was hinted at before. In other words, did we get the money or not? So if you got the money, then you can go back in here and resolve it. Okay. On this one, I'll put a note and I'll say it's resolved. And what happened here, and I might just leave. Yeah, my system does weird things. I'll simply say they paid the 7 in June or whatever. Again, I do this later, not now. But the main thing is when you resolve it, you can add a note in, and usually you want to identify what happened here. They resolved it by paying us. We agreed to disagree, whatever it is. So put that in as a note so you can see patterns later. So it's mostly for you. Okay. All right. At this point, as soon as I save and close, I have 5 invoices in there. If I click disputed again, I have one less because I resolved that one. Okay. Okay. Any other questions I need to cover, Cameron? Otherwise, I got the last one and probably what I consider the most important report in Oasis.
Is that report you're about to move on to showing closed disputes and open disputes?
On that one, closed disputes and open disputes, you can do a find. And done this wrong. Oh, disputed. You can show active disputes. Oh, yeah, it shows all of them. So if you, anytime you do a find, disputed in this case, and then you're probably hinting at it, probably also want a factory on it or a customer or something like that. Anytime you do that, you can then get into reports, customizable invoice listing. And I won't go through this entire thing today, but if you do the selection part of this, it's exactly the same find. Although I probably want to change the year on. Or at least
So for reports, they can print out any layout they would like and select for disputed, but can they differentiate between closed and open disputes?
you would have to do that through the layout and to actually show it and group it.
All right.
Good point. Most people, to be quite honest, what they do is, I mean, if you're wanting to report on it, you're probably trying to, try and identify who the bad actor is on it, for lack of a better explaining. But but most people just go down here, dispute, and just try and make that whole list go away. Okay. I'll see if I can work more of the reporting side of that in that July conversation, because that's an interesting conversation there. All right, but the most important report in mine, because we have just enough time to cover this, but the most important report in Oasis, in my opinion, is the one that makes sure that you get paid. Okay, and it's an old report. It's been around for a while. We continue to upgrade and make it better over the years. But if you go to orders and then reports, it's called an order transaction report. Okay, and order backlog. Okay, the key thing is, you're probably going to want to change your time, or at least let the time frame be in the past. Today, I'll go ahead and make it for today, because all my orders were created today. The key here is, if you put an order in the system, technically it immediately goes on the backlog, because we did work, we created an order, we sent it to the factory, we're managing that order, we should get paid for it. But it takes time for that order to ship, takes time for that order to get paid on. Okay, so you probably want to go back. I have some folks tell me they won't worry about it until it's at least a month or 3 months old, depending upon who it is and some details there. But main thing is, keep that in the past, and let's show what it looks like. Now this one just has one order left. Let me zoom in a little bit here. And the way you read the report is like this. It's going to have a page for each factory, and there's some options. You can turn that on or off if you don't like it. But here's my one factory in here. Here's that one PO. The sell amount was 9,766. Okay. We get full credit on this. So it actually would show lower if this was like that editorial spec, where we only get 50% of it. But we get full value of this order. Billable, what this is 9,766, basically the sales credit, or I'm sorry, the sell less any invoices. Now it's the sell, not the sales credit. But if I take all the full value of the order less the full value of the invoices, I'll end up with billable, and that tells me how far along this is as far as shipping. Okay. Now, quick comment on that. If you're still not paid on this thing, and the entry date on this is April of 2022, you probably want to start asking some questions. It's like, okay, are they sitting on the invoices, not telling us about it, so they can keep our money? That happens. Okay, but this gives you the capability of taking a look at it. But if it's less than the amount of the sale, or is not complete, I immediately look at the date to make sure that there's not an issue there. Now, again, you may have to talk to your customer service person or someone that knows a little more about that project to know if there's any warts that you just kind of have to wait on. And again, you might take a note if you've learned some details there. We do give some information as far as commissions and details here. And by the way, there's other columns you can add as well. But the main thing is, we received $515.90, and we still have that $700 receivable or open to receive. Okay, and we do show some status out here. That status is kind of nice. There's a question on that I probably would like to pick on a little deeper in, but the statuses are more for your reference or your process. The only status that really matters in Oasis is closed. That will remove the order from this report, at least by default. Okay. So anyway, if there's a question on that one, let me know. But the main thing here is we have the sell less invoices gives us billable. And then we have whatever we received and receivable here. You could actually put it in total earnings as a column as well if you choose. This report can be used to find out all the orders that you need to go and just keep an eye on, make sure they get paid for. But you can run it wide open if you will, like today. So I ran last quarter to today, and this becomes a nice little cash flow report as well for management. So I see some folks do that as well. So this should be a number that is accurate. As long as you keep the orders in Oasis correctly and you reconcile consistently, then this becomes a nice number for management to say, okay, yeah, we have that much money coming in, plus whatever they have in the bank. That's a nice, health of the company number to have out there. So. All right, Cameron, any questions that I missed so far?
No new questions.
Okay. All right. So that's the content. Let me double check here before I get too carried on here. So today, hopefully, we've learned applying invoices to orders and Oasis. Yay. Adjusting the order terms to match reality. That's when we changed that 10% to 5%. Commission payment, we did that. We applied partial shipment invoices. Okay, that's just saying, hey, the invoice covers a couple of lines on the order, not the entire thing. Applying the box of stuff invoices, it's about the only way I know to explain that one. Added territory orders and invoices. By the way, you can do EDI orders in the same process. You just don't have to worry about the splits usually. So the order goes from the distributor to the factory. You get the invoice in. You can use that F3, create matching PO, and it'll actually create it in the system. By the way, real fast. So I've got to do that. Cancel. I've got orders for today. And that out AR, this is the order that got created as I was creating the invoice. So it did both steps for me, and it looks pretty much the same. And again, we just do that so it saves you a step. You don't have to create the order and then apply the invoice. You just do it all at once. By the way, I get the question later is, well, what if they ship something else against that order? At that point, it'll find the order, but it'll detect the fact that it was a territory. Basically, it thinks it'll be an out of territory order at that point. And as you place more new lines on the invoice, it'll create new lines on the order. So try that on your own. It works pretty good, actually. All right, we went through commission payments and we went through the order backlog, which I think is the most important report in Oasis, hands down, because it finds money you've already earned. Okay. Any questions? All right, I sure hope I was able to answer the questions correctly that were given to me. If you have other questions, pop them to support or anybody. We will answer them for you. I do look forward to presenting again in the upcoming months. And sorry, I don't have my dates filled in here, but May it will be the resale side. June will be shipping. And then in July, we'll deal with reports. And I'm going to think about the disputed report too, because that's kind of an interesting one. But there's various reports that we can go through there that are kind of neat. So I do appreciate your time and thank you for your attention. We will talk to you all later. Thank you.